Just do it. It'll turn out okay. And welcome back to our mini series, Dinosaurs with Dr. Dino.
Yes, hello, folks.
For those who are on my channel who may not know who he is, why don't you do a little introduction?
Sure. Hi there, folks. I am Dr. Dino, not an actual doctor. My name is entirely a parody of Kent Hovind's moniker. Though I am more credentialed than him, I at least have a bachelor's degree. Um, I like to talk about geology, paleontology, and evolution, and how creationists love to misrepresent all of those topics. Uh, yeah, that's pretty much me. I'm not making a lot of content on my channel right now, but I am starting up another channel with some friends where I'm actually a lot more active these days.
So, as soon as he gives me the link to that, I'll put that in my description below, so you can subscribe to that channel.
Oh, sure thing. I will send it to you.
Uh, Anyways, when he first appeared, we talked about the Allosaurus, the pterodactyls and dinosaurs in general. And last month, we talked about the or oh God, the Orthians swords.
Ornithischians, yeah.
Yes.
And there's the link to the channel. We are called the Boneheads. We use science communication to. Sorry, we use a game called Ark Survival Evolved to do science communication. It's actually kind of fun. And we might be branching out to other games in the near future.
Cool. So, you guys gonna play Spore or something?
Spore could be fun, but we're trying to stick to stuff that has real life animals in it.
Yeah.
At least for now. We do go into Spec Evo though.
Going from cellular to tetrapod might be a little jump there.
A little jump. It's a great game though.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No
What
follow
was
for
it?
follow. But anyways, so last time, the majority, if not all, of the animals we talked about, Clay talked about, were like omnivores or herbivores. This, except for a few of them in more modern times, these mostly are the carnivore side.
More or less. There are some herbivorous theropods, but most of them show up pretty late in the game.
Yeah, I know. Some of the birds now are fruit. Some are seed and fruit eaters.
Oh,
But
I'm not talking about birds. I'm talking about animals the size of Tyrannosaurus Rex.
I didn't know my side. I don't know how much of that lasted of them were herbivorous on more distant times. But anyways, so these guys, as far as we know, are the only survivors of the dinosaur family, right?
Yes, definitely the only ones surviving into the modern day. Maybe a few ornithischians survived a bit into the Cenozoic, but if they did, we haven't found them yet. Be cool though. And yeah, so this time we are talking about the theropods of the early and middle Jurassic. Now, if you'll recall from previous episodes, viewers, or if you missed them, dinosaurs started off small. They all began as small bipeds that ran around really quick. A lot of them probably had feathers of some sort, and they were warm-blooded. Now, some dinosaurs retained all of those traits. Some lost most of them. It really depends on the lineage you're discussing. But this lineage, the theropods, eventually led to birds.
Yeah.
And there's some very interesting stops along the way that we'll be making as we go through
Yeah.
this presentation.
Also, real fast.
Yes.
Also, could be wrong here too, but most of the other clades that I know of eventually uh, went back. A lot of them went back to four to all four on the ground. But these guys mainly remained bipedal for the most part. I think, if my memory serves me correctly.
Uh, yes, we actually don't know of any quadrupedal theropods. There are some hypotheses for that. I think one of the big ones is just that the way their wrist articulates with the hand, they can't really put a lot of weight on them. So that would have prevented them from going quadrupedal, even though there were some big herbivores. And that means that a lot of theropods had a maximum size they could really get to while still being bipeds. We won't be seeing any of those in this presentation. That'll be in the future. But it's kind of neat.
So, what are these ghost lineages?
So, ghost lineages are a really important subject in paleontology. Basically, when you find a fossil, it's in a rock layer, and that rock layer can be dated to a particular time. And as you uncover more fossils in different rock layers, you can usually draw a line between two different taxa or two different animals. Like, oh, these things are really similar. They're probably close related. They have all of these shared derived characteristics we don't see in their ancestors, stuff like that. Sometimes, though, the gap is a little lengthy. And sometimes the gap is just completely broken, and you just have the dangling end of it at the very end of their evolutionary tree. A ghost lineage is when that happens, when we just have a huge gap in time between the oldest representative and the youngest representative of, or in the next oldest representative of a clade. We can see this in dromaeosaurs, actually, the raptors. The oldest ones we have are about 130 million years old. And then the next oldest ones we have are like 20, 30 million years later. But just based on how derived they are, they probably evolved sometime in the Jurassic. We just don't have them. So we have these big ghost lineages between what we do know.
Uh,
And we have this with some mammal groups too. It's unfortunate, but it's generally tied to just how rare fossilization is. It's an extremely rare process, so there's many animals that we'll never see representative of, no matter how thoroughly we comb through the rock record. Yeah, pesky created kinds.
what?
Well, shall we go to the next slide? So here we see a phylogenetic tree, or family tree, of the theropods. This is from a 2015 publication, so it's a few years out of date, but most of it still holds up today. Now, if you look closely, I don't know, can you full screen the image?
Yes, hold on. Uh, 1 second.
Yeah, that's better. So, viewers, if you look closely, you can see that the horizontal lines leaning to different dinosaurs. Some of them are thick, and some of them are really thin. The thick lines show solid, direct fossil evidence, as in, this is when the oldest one was found, and this is when the youngest one was found. That black line is between them. The thinner lines are where we don't have any animals from those groups, but they're pulled back into when they probably diverged based on other animals or scraps of material that don't have a proper name, stuff like that. Like, for example, I just talked about dromaeosaurs, the raptor dinosaurs. There are troodontids, which are related to dromaeosaurs. They're not quite dromaeosaurs. The oldest good fossils of them we have are from the early Cretaceous, but we have what are probably troodontid teeth from the Middle Jurassic. So there's a big ghost lineage between their earliest evidence and the actually first named and described member. That's the ghost lineage.
So, like most of the major clades, they started dividing up in the Triassic.
A lot of them did. Some didn't start until the Jurassic. Most of the major groups of theropods appeared in the Jurassic. Not all of them, but most of them. And for this discussion, we will be talking about the section of theropods known as neotheropods. Those are theropods that are definitively on the lineage that leads to birds after sauropods split off. So, like stuff like Herrerasaurids and Eoraptor, they could possibly be sauropodomorphs, like just really basal, really old sauropods. What we in common parlance would call primitive, but that's not usually the term that paleontologists like to use or evolutionary biologists like to use. But common parlance, they're the primitive ones. So we will be talking about everything from Neotheropoda down. That's coelophysoids, all the way down to some rather interesting things near the bottom of the screen. Should be good to pop the chat back up. I just wanted to make sure people could see the diagram. And also, Vendalia, would you mind sharing the link to the presentation either in the description or in the comments?
Sure.
I wanted to embed the sources in the pages so people can just click the source and go to it.
All right.
Make it easy.
1 second.
Da-da.
Well, I can't share. You have to share the link because
Oh,
I don't have permission to share. I don't think.
Well, that's Google Docs. Why you got to be this? Why you got to do this? Anyone with the link can? You should be able to share the link.
Let me try again.
I'll send it again in the chat. I can post the link in my chat.
You should have permission. I think you have permission to post in my chat, don't you?
No, I don't have a wrench.
Oh, I will give it to you then in a second.
Okay. And so this does mean, folks, if you want to join us along or join us as we go through the presentation, feel free.
All right. You are a moderator now.
I am a moderator now. Let me just refresh the page. Boop. Yep, there we go. So if you want to check out this presentation for yourself, folks, double check my sources. They are on the pages, easy to see. They should all be online, unless they went down in the last day or two. I think that's all I had written for this page. You have any questions or anything you'd like to talk about?
So the thicker ones are ones we know about, and the thinner names are ones we don't know much about, or what?
Yeah, the thicker lines are solid fossils. Like we have like half the skeleton or something like that. Like this is definitely a ceratosaur or a tyrannosaur.
So
the thin lines are scrappy evidence or based on inference, which unfortunately we have to do. But every year, those thick lines grow.
So the Ceratosauria, the Tentori, and the Saurelias are those three thick names.
Oh, the thick lines, not the thick names.
Oh,
Tetanurae, Silurosauria, and Theropoda, Ceratosauria. Those are just major clade names. So
okay.
major groups.
Right. And there I see the one a lot of people hate because of that the third Jurassic Park movie, Spinosaurus.
Yeah, Spinosaurids are a little infamous. They're really cool, though. They're really cool dinosaurs. They're so weird. And honestly, we're still fighting a bit about what they are. Just because of how strange and derived they are. But with all that said, now we can get into our first example of, like, our first named example of the show. So this is Megapnosaurus. It is a coelophysoid. Now, again, in case you didn't catch one of the previous episodes, coelophysoids are small, really lightly built theropods. They could run really fast. They probably ate small prey. They generally had pretty weak jaws. Um, they'd kind of be like the jackals that we have today. Like, they're not going to take down a moose or something like that. They'd probably eat rats if they were still around. But they're important. In coelophysoids, we see a lot of. Oh, go ahead.
I say, but they don't. They probably don't give birth to their fake penis like the jackal.
I think that's hyenas,
Oh,
but
God,
no, it's okay. Anyone? Okay, for anyone confused about that, hyenas are really weird, and the females have what's called a pseudo penis that they give birth through. So it's like they have to pass a kidney stone the size of their head every time they have puppies.
Oh, and I totally got confused anyway, since hyenas are more closely related to cats anyways than they are the dogs.
Yeah, they are. They're bizarre creatures. Anyway, we see a lot of uh, important features appear in the coelophysoids that we see carried on to further theropods, even though the coelophysoids do die out by the mid Jurassic. Let's see. And the interesting thing is, as a group, we have a lot of bone beds, like multi-individual bone beds. Sometimes there are dozens, or I think even hundreds in one case, of just coelophysoids and almost nothing else. Maybe a couple lizards or crocodilians. Now, that doesn't mean that they lived or hunted in packs. We can't say that for sure. They could be like a lot of modern birds and just have been really tolerant of their own species. That's something we see a lot of in reptiles, honestly. Like, they're fine with communal living, even though they don't cooperate or help each other at all. But it is neat to see. In fact, I don't think, or there are two other kinds of theropod that I can think of that we also find in big death assemblages. One is Allosaurus, which, again, could be pack hunting, could be family living, but most of the sites that multiple individuals have been found in were probably deposited during the dry season. So they might have just been attracted to water and died because it was super dry. The other group, though, are tyrannosaurids. I think there are three separate genera of tyrannosaurids that have been found in these massive death assemblages of multiple individuals. It is really cool when we find them.
Right, we have a question in chat.
So the extinction of the dinosaurs, I'm guessing, is it supposed to be 65 or 66 million years ago? So it's closer to 66. Initial radiometric dating estimates were a bit off. They've since been corrected or refined. I think it's something like 65 point. I want to say 65.8, but I'm not. Let me double check.
It's funny when I first heard it was 66 million years ago. Now instead of 65 that we thought before, I was like, did we pass the million year mark somewhere in the year 2000? Did we pass that mark already?
Let's see. That is something we'll specifically get into in the in one of our last few episodes. But yeah, 66, almost exactly 66 million years ago. Actually, never mind, I was wrong. Plus or minus about 40,000 years.
All right.
Right. And the pictured animal here is Megapnosaurus. I believe it's Megapnosaurus rhodesiensis, although that might be an older name for it. And it has a really interesting name history, actually. Yeah, what's a few 100,000 years between friends? Um, the the original name for Megapnosaurus was Syntarsis. Syntarsis means fused tarsals. The tarsals are a bone in your feet, so it had fused bones in its feet. Unfortunately, after it was named, scientists realized that there was already a beetle named Syntarsis, which of course there was, because there's
and,
billions of insects.
and first come, first serve.
Yeah, unfortunately. So its name was changed to Megapnosaurus, which is a bit of a joke, and I'll get into why in a minute. But the really ironic thing is that beetle is no longer called Syntarsis. It was synonymized with another genus. It's a mess. It's a mess.
Just
Anyway,
go back in
Megapnosaurus.
time and name and get these names first.
Oh, we should. But Megapnosaurus translates to big dead lizard. That's not an exaggeration. And
I hope
I
it's
guess it's stuck.
I hope it's dead. Even though it's small, I really wouldn't want to see it around.
Well, I mean, you can call it small. It's the size of a large dog. Like, I wouldn't want. I'd probably win, but I wouldn't want to get in a fight with one.
Yeah, well, still a dog. Even a large dog is small compared to some the future ones we'll be seeing. I'm sure.
Yes, some we'll be seeing in this episode, actually.
Not for those who can't see the map. Where was this clade?
South Africa, specifically what used to be called Rhodesia. Hence the name Rhodesiensis. That means from Rhodesia. And in fact, there have been some scientists who want to lump it in with Coelophysis because they're very similar. But Megapnosaurus lived quite a bit later than the latest Coelophysis.
Right.
Great.
Anybody have any
questions
for this particular branch of the family tree before we go on?
Yes, folks, if you have any questions, please do feel free to ask them. Happy to answer any questions about dinosaurs that won't get our channels flagged.
Does that mean there are questions about dinosaurs that will give us flagged?
Depending on the questions asked, maybe. On a lighter note, as people can probably notice, I titled these I titled these a bit differently than previously because I wanted to have some fun. So this is Growing in Hunger and Power. Towards the end of the Triassic, and especially into the early Jurassic, a lot of the large land crocodilomorphs started to die out. Whether that was due to climate change or being outcompeted,
Or
can't
the
really say.
Jurassic extinction?
yeah, the Triassic-Jurassic extinction probably didn't help. But regardless, a lot of theropods started to get bigger. While they were usually still pretty lightly built, they did get a bit stockier, especially in the head and arms. They got really strong, actually. Uh, this group used to be called Dilophosaurids. That that classification has been contested, so we just have Dilophosaurus here as a stand-in for all of these early branching, large-bodied theropods. And Dilophosaurus is a pretty interesting animal. The name means two-crested lizard because it has a pair of crests on its head. And uh, see, we have a few individuals. And what's interesting is one of them is really beat up. Just recalling this from the top of my head, but it has a broken arm. I think it has broken ribs and maybe a broken jaw too. Just a super beat up animal. And it's cool that we have that preserved. We don't always get a lot of stuff like that. And I mean, of course, I got to bring it up because we're talking about it. This animal was in Jurassic Park, and everybody knows it was actually bigger than shown in Jurassic Park. Now, fortunately, since the movie came out, it's been leaked that the Dilophosaurus in the movie is supposed to be a juvenile, which is cool. But that might have been retconned in the most recent movie.
Was that the one that killed the fat guy in the first one and the main villain in the last one?
Yeah, the Venom spitter, which is also a bit of speculative evolution, which honestly I don't hate. I don't hate it. It's wrong. We have no evidence that Dilophosaurus spat venom. We have zero evidence of that. And there are correlates of such abilities that you can find on the bones. So we can say that with some confidence. But I don't hate it as an idea.
Yeah, I just gotta say, at least storyline for purposes, not biologically, I thought it was fitting that the same dinosaur that took out the guy that destroyed the first park also took out the guy who paid him to destroy the first park.
I mean, yeah, that is. I can agree with that. I feel there could have been a more fitting death, but yeah. Oh, jeez. Looking at the chat, Crow has a million cloaca-related questions, so horrifying. And Sydney Raptor asks if the big frill was accurate. No. We don't have evidence. We don't have evidence of any structure like that on any dinosaur, as far as I know. The structure in the movie was based on the Australian frilled lizard. And if Dilophosaurus had a similar frill, there would be very obvious signs of it in its anatomy. That doesn't rule out that some dinosaur could have evolved that, but we don't have evidence for it right now.
Probably got it from his frog DNA.
Australian lizard frill from frog DNA. Yeah, maybe. Oh dear. But yeah, Dilophosaurus, pretty cool, and it's one of the first large predator theropods. I think it's a bit bigger than Herrerasaurus, which we talked about previously, and it's definitely more lightly built, so it would have been faster.
It says this could have been an apex predator.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we have any large Pseudotsuchians from its environment. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think we do. All right.
This was drawn by Rudolf Himna.
Yes, Rudolf Hema. I literally just learned about this man 2 days ago. Fabulous paleo artist. Just jaw dropping stuff. Seriously, go check him out, folks. Go check out all the artists that I shout out in this presentation. Really, paleo art is awesome. Let's see. Yes, armoring up and biting down. So we're still in the early Jurassic, and things are starting to pick up. By that I mean some theropods are starting to slow down, get armored, and get much more powerful. So pictured here is Saltrio venator, hunter of the Saltria rock formation. It is an early ceratosaur. Now, the group is named after the very famous Ceratosaurus. I'm sure people
like the kind that Dapper is.
Exactly like the kind that Dapper is. Yes, and ceratosaurs are characterized from other early theropods by a much more robust build, flexible tails, and massive butchering knife looking teeth. And I do mean massive. I think Ceratosaurus has some of the largest teeth for its body size of I'm not going to say all, but at least a large swath of carnivorous dinosaurs. Saltriovenator is pretty fragmentary, but we do have enough to identify it as a ceratosaur. Unfortunately, the fossil was discovered when a mining crew blew it up with explosives on accident. Which unfortunately happens quite a bit. But ceratosaurs are cool. They're one of my favorite groups of theropods, and although ceratosaurids in particular die out in the Cretaceous, their descendants do see the end of the dinosaurs. In fact, it could be argued they completely take over the southern continents.
So where are these guys from?
They're kind of found everywhere. We have ceratosaurs in Europe. Saltriovenator is from Italy, but we have North American ones. We might have a South American ceratosaurid. I could be wrong on that.
I was wondering. These
Yeah,
guys.
they're everywhere.
So these guys.
Nope, we have ceratosaurids. Never mind.
So these guys came along after these guys came along after the Pangea split.
Yes, this was definitively in the Jurassic, at least as far as we know. Yes, and Eddie, I picked this paleo art because I like it. Like, I'm not sure if it's probably not the most accurate paleo art I could have picked, but I think it looks pretty cool, and I think that's an important thing to consider with paleo art. You want something eye-catching that gets people to ask questions about the creature.
Because there were no photographs back in the day.
True, this could just be a male in the breeding season, which honestly isn't too far off from a lot of modern birds.
Now,
oh, go ahead.
Now, I would.
Oh dear.
As I said, I wouldn't think that mainly predators would need to have armor. That they more of their prey and stuff, but apparently they need armor too.
Well, not always so much. Well, first, not always so much that they need armor as it just happens. That happens with evolution.
True.
Sorry, excuse me. But also just they're not alone in their environments. Particularly with ceratosaurs later on, they tend to share their environments with much larger, much more dangerous predators.
That is true.
So being armored up can really helped them survive. And I don't mean that they were like ankylosaurs, like they weren't that armored, but they did, a lot of them got really thick scales, or in the case of Ceratosaurus in particular, osteoderms. So bones in the skin to help ward off bites and claws and stuff like that.
So these guys were like maybe not apex, but say mesopredators then?
Maybe. Um, like I said, they're often in areas with other theropods, so there might be some niche partitioning.
Okay.
Niche partitioning is when you have a bunch of animals in an area that are, say, herbivores or a bunch of carnivores, but each of them specializes in a particular type of food.
Like one
It
goes
minimizes
after
their competition.
sauropods, the other one goes after stegosauruses.
Exactly. Although, well, we'll talk about Ceratosaurus more in the future, but there have been some interesting ideas proposed for it. And I think that's all I have to say about Saltrio venator. Okay. Now, oh, sorry, I just realized something else I could say. Could you go back?
Sure.
Oh yeah, also Sydney Raptor, armor for interspecies competition. That's also true. A lot of animals will fight amongst themselves for the right to mate, or food, or territory, or because they feel like it and the other guy looked at them funny.
Good old sexual selection.
Yes. Animals will fight, and a little bit of dermal armor can help, especially when you have, again, massive teeth. Anyway, what I wanted to bring up was that we are going down the list of theropod groups, trending towards birds. Now, this is going to bias the list a little bit because we're looking at the groups splitting off from the bird lineage. You can draw the theropod tree oriented around whatever groups you want. We're just picking birds because they're modern dinosaurs. They survive the longest, and they're the most diverse in modern times. So there's generally a lot to say about them, and they are important. Not that the rest aren't, but birds are particularly important. Ceratosaurs are the earliest diverging, so the earliest split off of the group known as Avarostrans. So Avarostrans are a group within theropods. It translates as bird nose.
Real fast. Apparently, a crow thinks birds are cool for some reason. I don't know why a crow would
Hey,
think that.
hey, I agree, Crow. I agree, Crow. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the Avarostrans, the bird noses. As far as I know, well, not just as I do know, a lot of the dinosaurs in this group have evidence of an avian type respiratory system. Now, for anyone unaware, birds don't breathe like humans, and neither did a lot of dinosaurs. They have what's called a unidirectional breathing system, where air flows in, goes through the body, and then comes back out. They only have to breathe in, and it just pumps the air through. It's a lot more efficient. Like it transports oxygen around the body a lot easier and faster. And that's why a lot of birds can fly like miles up in the air, but bats really can't. It's also why humans are awful at super high altitudes unless you've acclimated to it. But birds can go up and down several thousand feet without much problem. Anyway, in the Avarostrans, we have marks on the bones that indicate that they had the same bird type flow through lung, which is pretty cool. Even something like this that doesn't look anything like a bird was a really efficient breather, probably warm blooded, and just a quick, honestly, I'm not going to say intelligent, but a quick animal that could probably learn pretty easily. It's really neat.
Now, if we go on the next thing, in fact, this I don't know if it was this clade or all the clades, but their jaws were getting stronger, or their mouths were getting stronger as we go on. At least some of them are.
Surret, um, generally, yes. There are a few groups that lighten up later on, but a lot of the Avarastrans have very strong bite forces, yes. At least compared to earlier dinosaurs. Dilophosaurus actually had a pretty strong bite too. Um, that's a paleo meme that it had a weak bite. More examination has shown that it had a strong bite. But basically, everything from here on out could probably gnaw through your leg pretty quick, except for the really small ones.
Now, uh, Katina, did he answer your question? Or you still need to answer it? Ask it.
Yeah. Again, folks, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I don't think we have much of a time limit tonight. Okay. So now within the theropoda, once again, theropods, there is another smaller group within Avarastrans. These are the Tetanurae. Tetanurae have generally stiffer tails than previous theropods. So their tails act like a balancing beam, not wiggling around as they run, but kind of bobbing behind them. It generally made them more agile and faster. Well, just faster in general, actually. The way dinosaurs move their legs backward is different than humans. Dinosaurs don't have a butt, right? Um, their leg muscles attach to their tails. So if you have a more stiff tail, it's easier to pull on to make your leg go back, and it helps it store up energy for the next step. It makes your walking way more efficient. They also generally have 3 or less fingers. Even modern birds have 3 fingers. It's just that 2 of them are fused. I did notice Crow is interested in how far back the unidirectional breathing goes. So, I don't know about the breathing of other extant archosaurs. They do share similarities. So, modern crocodilians have a reduced but similar system to birds. Let me see if I can find a diagram. Again, they breathe different than mammals do. Let's see.
It's almost like they come from family tree that split off a long time ago.
Yeah, really weird. Okay. Let me pop up this image.
Right.
How do I share something? Share screen. If you wouldn't mind popping this up super quick. Okay, so this is a CT scan of an alligator. And these colored highlighted things in here are its lungs. Now, at first glance, they probably look really weird, but that's because you're probably used to seeing a mammalian lung, where it's basically just a big sac. With alligators, they breathe in, and the air goes through all of these passages. The oxygen is absorbed, held onto, and they can stay underwater for quite a while before they have to come up to the surface and let it out. Now, part of that's because of their slower metabolism, but the other part of it is that they have the way their lungs are constructed, they can easily drain all of the oxygen out of the air in the lungs really efficiently. And keep in mind, these guys diverged way before the other dinosaurs did. kind of neat. It's also important to remember that our modern crocodilians are super derived in their own right. They're actually rather weird even among crocodilians. They just happen to be the ones that survived.
Yeah, her question. But I was trying to figure out if more than one clade became birds.
Yes and no. And we'll actually get to one of those later. So if you hang on about 30-ish minutes, probably, I can give you an answer on that.
Finally, Sydney asked, one-way breathing can lead to biojet propulsion.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun. Anyway, what's shown here is one of the earliest diverging tetanurans. So again, those are the stiff-tailed theropods. This is called Piatsnicus. Sorry, I always have trouble with this name. Piatnitskysaurus. Piatnitskysaurus. There we go. This is a megalosaurid. So that name might sound familiar, and yes, this is related to Megalosaurus.
To answer your question, Eddie, the answer is both.
Well, it is specifically Piatnitskysaurus, but they are closely related. It is a megalosaurid.
So it's a part of the family, but not. It's one of. Is it like a square is a triangle? A square is a rectangle. But rectangle is not a square thing.
Yeah, kinda. Although it's more like all. What's it? All Chargers are Dodge vehicles, but not all Dodge vehicles are Chargers. They're very closely related. They're very similar animals. Megalosaurus, for anyone who may not know, was one of the first named dinosaurs. All the way back in the early to mid 1800s in England. Its name means big lizard. Because they could figure out it was a big reptile, but very little else about it.
Of course, the very first description of them being quadrupedal was a little off.
Yes, I think that reconstruction was mostly informed by monitor lizards, like a Komodo dragon. So wildly inaccurate for a dinosaur. But to be fair, comparative zoology was in its very infancy. Like, this is when the biological sciences were still being semi-established. But it's still really cool, historically. And we found a bit more of Megalosaurus. Honestly, not too much. We don't have much of Megalosaurus anymore. Or still, but we do have some of its relatives. And Piatnitskysaurus is one of them. The interesting thing is, it's from Argentina. So it's not even in Europe where Megalosaurus was found. All the way across the globe. And we will actually be seeing a lot of Argentina because Argentina has some great rock exposures from all throughout the Mesozoic. And we have some very important dinosaurs from there. I think that's all I have on this one.
But these guys branched off before birds, right? Or they
they're what before birds?
They branched off?
Yes, long before birds. They are on the lineage, but they are more basal than birds.
The flesh gazers.
Okay.
Grazers.
The flesh grazers. Yes, that is a reference to a lifestyle that we'll be going more into in the early Cretaceous. But the dinosaur pictured here looks a lot like Allosaurus, a super famous theropod.
You said
it's not like Allosaurus, and it threw me for a loop the other day when I was putting this presentation together. This is Asphaltovenator. Now, it's not named for asphalt. It's named for the Cañadón Asfalto Formation, I believe in Argentina. Again. But it is an allosauridoid. And that means it's related to the later Allosaurus. Now, allosauroids are avitheropods. They are, compared to everything else we've seen so far, even more bird-like. Like, a lot of their skeleton is very reminiscent of birds, to a shocking degree in some cases, actually. Allosauroids are another group that we have direct evidence of a unidirectional lung in. I think it's an Allosaurus itself, actually. Um, but Asphaltovenator is older. It is 30 million years older than Allosaurus, even though it looks nearly identical. And we have allosauroids that continue way after Allosaurus too. So whatever these guys were doing in their environment was apparently so good they barely had to change for like 50 million years, which is nuts.
Apparently, we have a creationist in our chat.
It seems we do. Um, I don't stop me if I start talking about this too much, but we do not have any evidence for Noah's flood, Jess. All of the rock layers. Oh, sorry, I'm in top chat, so I'm only seeing one of our messages. But all of the rock layers contradict there being a global flood. We have no evidence for it. We know what flood deposits look like. We know what they look like in the rock record, and we know how to identify them. We don't find them everywhere. We find a lot of other environments and situations preserved.
You know,
And
so I was just say, I think it's funny when they say the dinosaurs, climbed up. Like, so elephants can climb higher than dinosaurs then, since they're on
I mean,
higher rock ledges.
apparently, I want to know why birds could climb higher than pterosaurs.
And, and modern day butterflies too.
Yeah. Why do we see sea life fossils on top of mountains? So the continents move. There's not really competing hypotheses. We know why the continents move. It's more so a debate on which factors are more important. Basically, uh, the plates tend to dip into the Earth's mantle at some points, and they want to keep falling deeper, so they pull on the rest of the tectonic plate. At other places, magma is welling up from the mantle and pushing the plates away, causing divergence. You can see this in places like the African Rift Valley or the Mid Atlantic Ridge. And as the continents move, they buckle, they push up against each other. If you put your hands on a table in front of you, flat, and push them together, and you just keep pushing, your fingers will eventually start moving upwards because of the compression. The rocks are doing the exact same thing. And that means that older, lower lying rock layers can get pushed up high into the sky. Let's see. Flood legends all over the world that sound like the flood in the Bible. We have flood legends all over the world. A lot of them differ significantly from the biblical account. We've seen older versions of the biblical account of the flood in other older writings. Writings that were probably written around the time the flood supposedly took place.
Ness says whales climbed higher than pterosaurs.
Yeah, whales climbed the mountains better. And they climbed it better than mosasaurs or Dunkleosteus. Like listen, I do just want to say, I am anti-pseudoscience. I am not anti-religion. This is just my personal stance.
Mm-hmm.
I feel I encourage people, if they find meaning in their religions, to have a religion. If it's good for you, do it. I think that's great. But you don't have to throw the science out with the bathwater. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of creationist apologists do. They lie about the science and about the world to make money and scam people.
And unfortunately,
I hate that.
I'm going to rant real fast. Unfortunately, some of it leads to things like anti-vaccination, stuff like that.
Yes, yes, it does.
Once you
yeah,
go down the
I hate it.
anti-science train, you go down.
How do you know whales climbed higher? Whales are found in generally higher up or younger in our worldview, if we want to put it that way. They're found in higher rocks than very similar animals in the rock record. And by very similar, I mean they would have lived the exact same way and had the same ability to survive during a global flood catastrophe. These are
And
animals like mosasaurs, which are giant lizards that spent their whole lives at sea.
yeah, and also, I don't think, at least in any of the translations I've ever read, they even mention whales in the Bible by name.
Don't they call them big fish? Or am I misremembering?
Well, they mention big
Like-
fish, but I don't think. Well, only big fish I know of they mention is in Jonah, but
Yeah, but I think they just call it a fish because everyone called them fish at that point. But yeah, Jess, I don't want to get into this too much more because the stream isn't about this, but I'd encourage you, look into the science, look into geology. There are great courses on YouTube or other places online that don't come from apologists, and they can teach you a lot about the natural world. And in fact, many Christians, well, not just Christians, but religious people all over the world, they look into the science to better understand the world their God or gods created. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Anyway, where were we?
We're talking about the not Allosaurus.
Yes, Asphaltovenator. Its name is weird. Like I said, it means a hunter of the Cañadón Asfalto Formation. Yeah, Sydney, you're not wrong. So hunter of the Cañadón. Its species name is Variedade, which when I first read it, I thought it meant like valid. But no, it refers to an organization that helped excavate the fossil that has Variedad in their name. Or Validad in their name. Just kind of fun. But yeah, the Avatheropods, this group, includes allosauroids all the way to birds. They are very birdy. Most of them probably had some feathering. And they were very successful. I think that's all I've got for this guy.
So these guys are more closely related to birds than the last group is, correct?
Yes, they have very birdy skeletons. They probably lived very bird-like. They grew like birds. Like they grew very fast in most. I think in most cases, most of these guys were full-grown adults. So from like a foot-long chick to a 30-foot adult in less than 15 years, less than 10 years in some cases. Which, considering how much weight they had to be packing on every week, that's pretty insane.
Now, I won't say this the wrong way, because they weren't quote were these arms still, I don't say useful, but were they getting smaller than normal arms, or they still?
So for the allosauroids, later on they do. That happens after Allosaurus, because Allosaurus still has very powerful, very well muscled arms. Oh, and also I feel I should mention, we have a lot of asphaltovenator skeleton, which is kind of cool. This thing is like 180 million years old, but we have almost the entire front half of the animal. It's neat. Oh, and we have a good question from Crow. How do we get the rate of growth? So, like a lot of modern animals, dinosaurs have bones. And the thing about your bones is they will grow faster if you have a lot of food, and they'll grow slower if you have very little food. In most animals, this represents like summer and winter, the dry season, the wet season, stuff like that. Because of how the Earth works, there are seasons around most of the globe, unless you live right on the equator. Even then, there's a bit, but whatever. Um, so there will be a season where there's more food and a season where there's less food. When this happens, the animal will grow more during one season than the other because they have a lot more food. That means that their bones will be more compact in some areas than others. It'll be more compact in the areas where they have less food because there's less growth. That leaves lines in the bone. Just literally just like tree rings. It's caused by a very similar process. And you can count up those rings and figure out the age of the animal. And as they grow, eventually they will reach what's called senescence. Senescence is when you have essentially stopped growing. You might grow a little bit more, but you're an adult, basically. Like human males generally can keep growing until they're in their early 20s. But when you're about 19 or 20 years old, you're probably about your adult height. You might gain an extra inch or two if you grow a lot, but you're basically an adult. And your bones reflect that. So do theirs. The rings are a lot closer together.
And these guys had, like most, had the hollower bones than we do. Us on the mammal side.
Yes. Yes, they had hollow bones. They're lighter than mammalian bones, pound for pound. I'm not sure if they were quite as strong. I don't remember the stress experiments, what the results were. I think they're weaker in some cases. Could be wrong on that. Probably wrong on that. But they're different. They are hollow. It's cool. Dinosaurs are cool. I say that as a totally unbiased observer. And here we have, yes, the tyrants. So believe it or not, folks, Tyrannosaurids, well, they don't appear super early, but they appear earlier than you might think. But they don't look like you think they do. Sorry, were you going to say something, Vinalu?
So these guys were the runts of their family?
Yes, these were the ancestors. They were small, birdy, and quick. Shown here is Chilescus. Chilescus is a proceratosaurid. Proceratosaurs are a group of tyrannosauroids, so they're not super closely related to T-Rex. They may have been ancestral. We can't say that for sure, but they were definitely closely related.
They took steroids?
Eventually they did. Actually, not until about the end of the Cretaceous. They waited a while. But proceratosaurids were generally small, with a few very big exceptions that we'll see in the early Cretaceous. So by small, I mean between 2 and 5 meters long. So between about 6 and 15 or 20 feet. Very lightly built, and actually very good runners. Like, exceptionally good runners. I think they're basically tied for speed with ornithomimids. So, the the bird mimics, the ostrich mimics, whatever you want to call them. So very fast, very leggy, and fluffy. We have evidence of feathers.
Where would they rank in a modern race?
And a modern, just running,
Yeah, with a modern.
they'd be near the top in most ecosystems.
I-
They'd probably be about as fast, if not faster, and longer running than wolves. Actually, yeah, probably faster and longer running than wolves because they have an avian respiratory system. They are Coelurosaurs, which is the next group within theropods that we're talking about. Coelurosaurs specifically have hollow vertebrae. I think that's. Wait, I just said that. I think that's where it comes from. Let me double check. I know Celus is hollow. Oh, okay. It's hollow-tailed lizards, so they have hollow tail vertebrae. It reduces the weight of the vertebrae on the tail, makes it easier to swing around, while mostly retaining its strength. They also generally have long arms, and in the case of Proceratosaurs, they generally have crests, which is kind of interesting, and it's something that continues all the way to the end of the Tyrannosauroids. Most of them have some sort of structure on the nose and or above the eyes that looks like a crest or a horn. Even Tyrannosaurus rex has markings that indicate it probably had big keratin pads or spikes on its nose, which is pretty cool. I don't believe we have the crest of Chilescus, but based on closely related animals like Proceratosaurus, it probably had the crests.
Real fast.
Or it probably had a crest.
You mean the ones that were that that have been that people have claimed that they're fake? Who made them?
Huh? The crests?
No, the Inca stones.
Oh, the ecostones. Okay, so that's actually something interesting to talk about. So, for those who don't know, the ecostones are something, I forget the tribe, but some tribe in Central America would make etched stones um, to like record history and stuff. And they usually have animals or people on them showing ceremonies, things like that. However, in the 1900s, a local dentist decided to start making some and sell them to tourists. He hired local people to carve the stones. He artificially aged them. I think it was in a bath of chicken feces because the chemistry of the feces caused the rock to artificially weather and look older. And then he sold that to tourists. And it's been known to be a hoax for decades now. Like, it's a very well-known hoax. Um, again, I believe we have that as testimony from local people who were hired to make them. They also depict things like heart and brain surgery and alien abductions. So, if you want to believe that that was happening, go ahead, I guess. But the people who made them say they were fakes. Oh, there was an older question before Neslig. Crow asks if the keratin nasal feature is related to beaks. I don't know. Um, I don't know. I don't believe we have evidence for beaks in tyrannosaurs. But we do have it in the next few groups of theropods. I think most of them have beaks. Not all, but most. So there might have been something going on there, but I can't say for sure. Let's see. As for Nestlig's question, T-Rex, I feel it had lips. There are more lipped. There are just more lipped animals on land than non-lips. and more lipped reptiles than non-lipped.
So they haven't got to their beak stages of the birds yet.
No, Tyrannosaurus probably didn't have a beak, but it almost certainly had lips, just based on every every other animal except crocodilians. And what we have to remember is that crocodilians are weird. Modern ones are, at least. They are aquatic specialists that may not be the best representatives of their ancestors. They have evolved just as much as modern birds have. Let's see. Jess is saying it's absurd. They're accurate depictions of dinosaurs. They are not. The the ecostones were based on toys, I think from the 1960s. They look like toys from the 1960s. They are horrifically outdated by modern standards. They have dragging tails. They walk like kangaroo. The dinosaurs walk like kangaroos. They're just, I'm sorry, they're not real. If they were real, that would be cool and we would admit that. But they're not.
It's the last page. Are you done this page?
Yes. Only click once, though, please.
Well, I only have one page to go.
No, what? No, wasn't supposed to show that.
If that's all that there is to show.
You're in the slideshow, right?
Yeah.
And you press next page?
Yeah. Maybe you can try sharing it.
Like you're in the slideshow presentation.
Yes.
Just a second. This is going to be a reveal. So, folks, people were. Oh, where is it? Hang on. Why is it? Yeah, slideshow. Okay, I'm sharing it. Okay. Google Slides, you're fired. You're drunk. So someone asked before if birds evolved once. And I said yes and no. And the reason why I say yes and no is because of these animals that I'm about to show you. So in the mid-Jurassic, a lot of weird things happened. Like I said before, a lot of dinosaurs started to appear. One of the stranger things that appeared are the Scansoriopterigids. I think the talking time with caffeine is covering up its face, but this is a Scansoriopterid. It is a small theropod with very long arms and hands that had membranes between the fingers. They were what happens when dinosaurs try to make a bat. And they're so weird. But they were a thing. They were real. It's so cool that they were. These appear a bit before the oldest definitive birds that we have, too. So these appear to be they're almost like a trial run of birds, in a way. And it looks like a dragon. It looks like a little dragon. It's so cool.
We don't know what dinosaurs looked like because we weren't there. We had the fossils. We don't know what it ate or anything. We just know it lived and died.
Jess, you're not being consistent. Just a bit earlier, you said the ecostones were accurate and that they looked like dinosaurs because we know what dinosaurs look like. You said that earlier. Now, as for what dinosaurs looked like, we know a lot of things about animals just by looking at the skeleton. We can't say what color they were, usually, there are exceptions, but we can get a pretty good idea. And there are a lot of dinosaur skin impressions, so we know what a lot of their skin looks like too. We know if they had armor in the skin, or if they had spikes, or 100 other weird little details. We have a lot of that information. In fact, some dinosaurs we do actually know the color of their skin because it's preserved that well. It's really cool. It's rare, but it's cool. And again, the Ecostone dinosaurs look like toys from the 1960s. There have been a few years since current year and 1960. Let me see. Yep, okay. So here is an image of an ecostone from Wikipedia. So it looks like we have what looks like a T-Rex up here. We have a sauropod over here. They're both dragging their tails. The T-Rex is hunched over like a kangaroo. It physically could not do that without breaking its tail and its spine. The Triceratops, its feet don't look like Triceratops' feet. It also has what looks like one horn in the middle of its head. I have no idea what this thing is. The only thing on here that looks kind of okay is the Stegosaurus. But that's really outdated too, because we have more complete Stegosaurus now, and they didn't hold their tails like that for one. They had long limbs and a lot of other features. Like, I'm sorry, these look like toys from the 1960s because that's what they were based on. And that's what the people who made them say they were based on. Also, we can date the carvings, and they're young. They're fresh. They're not 1,000 years old or 400 years old or whatever. They're they're young. I'm sorry, but they are. And we can go through as many of these examples as you want. Here's another one. Again, T-Rex posed like a kangaroo. That is not accurate. Oh, look, a Triceratops dragging its tail with feet that don't look like a Triceratops' feet. Also, the head's way too small. Like, oh yeah, there's this thing. This isn't the Ecostones. This is a petroglyph that has been quote unquote enhanced. It doesn't actually look like that. And by that, I mean, I believe this one is two separate engravings that are near each other, and creationists connected the lines to make it look like a dinosaur. Sorry, this is just, they're not real. Behemoth is said to have a tail that moves like a cedar. Yes. It looks like a sauropod's, or sorry, no, duh, words, you're making me mix up. It looks like a cedar tree. The cedar that's being referred to in that passage of the Bible is a local cedar tree that is small and wispy and waves in the wind.
Yet not
It
an
looks just
American
like
red,
an elephant's tail.
not an American red cedar from America. Totally on a different continent.
Nope. Here, let me see. Middle East cedar tree. Yep, a Lebanese cedar. Where is it? No, it's not one of these. Well, kind of like this. They're not very tall, and they're wispy. They float around in the breeze. It's not a single tall trunk like the American cedar. Like they're not the same. And I'm not the one saying that, just to be clear. I am not quoting them directly because I don't know their names, but I'm quoting Bible scholars here. I'm not a scholar of the Bible, but I have listened to people who are. Well, other than that, this was fun.
Yeah.
Um,
So, anything else about the brands that led off to the birds you were talking about? Was that for a future episode?
that will be in the future because the oldest birds we have are from the later Jurassic.
Right. So, uh, so the only major clade that looks like there's one I'm missing that we talked about still is the sauropodomorphs, I think.
I believe so, yes.
Who are more closely related to at least, or at least right now, since that hypothesis was proven to be false that I know of, that are more closely related to these guys than the last group we talked about.
The ornithischians.
Yes.
I'm not 100% sure. I don't know what way the literature is going to swing on that. I think right now that Saurischia is a group. But I could be wrong, and if I am, I'd be interested to see.
All right.
Let's see.
So,
Well, you want me to like say an outro? Or?
I was going to say, anything coming up on your channel or your other either of your two channels you want to advertise?
Sure. Though only one channel is mine. I'm. I don't know. I haven't done a lot of stuff on my personal channel lately, mostly because I've been really busy. I've had a lot of projects. I've got a big one coming up. I'm going to be talking more about expedition planning soon, I think. For those who don't know, I am a fossil preparator, currently in between projects, but I'm trying to find another one. And this summer, I will be going to Wyoming. I'm going to be heading out there, trying to find some dinosaur fossils. Not to take with me, but I want to try and find the original dig site that some fossils were taken from. Because if there's anything left there, it needs to be preserved before the Badlands devour it. On the other channel I'm on, I've started a new channel recently with some friends. We call ourselves the Boneheads. We're currently using the video game Ark Survival Evolved as a way to teach people about evolution and biology and Spec Evo and a bunch of other fun stuff. If you want to check us out, folks, it's at the Bone Heads. The logo is 3 layers of rock with fossils in them, surrounded by what looks like a drill. It's a tool used in fossil cleaning because 2 of us are preparators. Yeah, this week we'll be talking about a Spec Evo creature, which should be fun. It's a giant sloth with crystals on its back.
All right. So either anybody on my channel has subscribed to him yet, do that now, and vice versa. Anybody on Dino's channel has subscribed to me.
Of course.
Return the favor. As for my channel coming up next week, there's nothing because I'll be at a carnival in my area once a year, local carnival, checking it out. Then in 2 weeks, Jillian will be back on my channel to talk about the production code of comics. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm sure she'll explain it closely. In 3 weeks, I find his name real fast. Tapioca here, we back on my channel along with Ness and Landon for a Q&A about the history of years before Earth, our follow-up show. And then in a month from now, 3 weeks, about 3 to 4 weeks from now, can't do math. My friends Eric and Nick will be back to talk about the different Disney eras, from Golden Era to Dark Era to the Renaissance, all the Disney movies and their throughout time, and why they are good, bad, or whatever. And finally, in about a month from now, Dr. Dan will be back to talk about sauropods.
Yes.
So, does anybody have any last minute questions?
I'm not seeing any last minute questions, though I will say, might be streaming on that second channel. Not sure if I'll be doing that later tonight or sometime soon with my co-hosts, but if anyone wants to come enjoy some nerds talking about dinosaurs on a live stream, feel free to join us. Though we won't be giving any spoilers away about future creatures.
So, you have a closing catchphrase you used to like to say?
Have a good evening, folks. Hope you have a lovely day.
All right. And as always, never stop learning and enjoy the randomness. We will see you next week or 2 weeks from now. Bye.